Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you all to my History Reaction channel. Today, we're going to be heading back to Salmonella Academy to take a look at Emperor Joshua Norton, the only emperor of the United States, by, obviously, Salmonella Academy. As always, I will include a link to the original video in the description down below. Please consider heading over to Sam's channel and showing him a little love and appreciation if you like what you see here. So why did I decide to do this video? Because a little while back we watched one on Timothy Dexter, and there was a point in that video where they showed Dexter having a statue of himself being made, or a monument of himself being made among a hall of heroes, and there was another image there of a guy, a beard and funny looking hair and a funny looking hat. And I said in that video, he looks familiar. He reminds me of somebody. I think it's the Emperor of San Francisco. And turns out that's exactly who it was. So I thought we'd take a look at this one. Let's talk about the Emperor.
This video is sponsored by Wix. Hey kids, let me ask you, do you watch the news often? Have you attended a school in your life? You ever look at a dollar? If the answer to any of these questions is
none of the dollars I've ever looked at, though, quite had that marking on the front or back, especially the writing.
yes, then chances are you're familiar with at least a couple United States presidents. But if you're like me prior to last week, you've probably never heard of a United States emperor. Excuse me, good sir,
San Francisco.
but I should inform you that we're actually living under an emperor as we speak, at least according to my degree from the University of Reddit. Hey, that's great. Whoa, look over there. It's someone criticizing Elon Musk. And he's making typos. Anyway, let me tell y'all a story about a man named Joshua Norton. Norton was born in England at some point in the 1810s. Very little is known about the guy's younger years, other than the fact that he spent most of his youth in South Africa as part of the UK's colonization programs. He came to San Francisco in 1849 with a modest amount of wealth to his name, and worked his way up in the real estate and commodities markets to become one of the city's wealthiest citizens. All was normal in the life of Mr. Norton, until one day when he got a little too big for his britches. You see, in 1852, China was facing a huge famine, so they completely banned the export of rice. Naturally, San Fran's rice price began to skyrocket in response to the reduced supply, peaking at 36 cents per pound. Norton saw this and decided to buy a $25,000 rice shipment from Peru at 12 cents per pound, thinking he'd corner the market. Keep in mind, that's around $750,000 in today's money. Little did he know, that wasn't the only shipment coming out of Peru, and by the time he was able to sell it, rice was already back down to 3 cents a pound. Now, according to my calculations, that put Norton at a net loss of a whole frickin' lot. He subsequently got into a years-long court battle with the vendor who sold him the shipment, which only cost him more money, and ultimately left the man destitute. So, Norton did what anybody would do after losing everything. He drank a nice hefty dose of fuck it all and said, you know what? The courts can eat my shorts, the house can eat my blouse, Peru can eat my shoe. I declare myself emperor of these United States. And I'm telling every newspaper in the city about it. And then he did. Now, the papers could have just been like, what a lunatic, and that would have been the end of it. But instead they said, you know what, this guy's kind of a meme. Let's publish his declaration, just for gits and shiggles. People across the city had their laughs, and Norton's rise to power began. From here, he issued several more commands to the media, and unlike nowadays, people loved having regular Norton updates shoved in their face.
Speaking of someone who's had several videos interrupted by a Norton update, I completely feel that.
Among these announcements was a decree in 1859 to formally abolish the United States Congress. He also gave out a mandate to both the Protestant and Roman Catholic churches to formally ordain him as emperor. Although these edicts were ultimately ignored by the powers they were addressed to, they still served to build Norton's reputation around the city, and before long he was a fully fledged local celebrity. He was easily recognized by passerby, typically sporting a blue naval uniform and a beaver hat with a peacock feather in it. Pretty soon, Norton could expect to receive received the royal treatment wherever he went. People started to address him formally on the streets, he got to ride public transport for free, and he even got occasional tax payments from people sympathetic to his impoverished living situation. Oh, and get this, Norton became so famous that toy stores in the city began selling dolls of the man for kids to play with. How many people can you think of that were so legendary that they got dolls made after them? You got Emperor Norton, Mr. T, and the bear that Teddy Roosevelt decided not to shoot. That's it, really. Also, though not backed by actual law in any way, his declarations came to be taken relatively seriously by the populace around him. For example, according to Norton, saying Frisco instead of San Francisco would be punishable by a $25 fine. Talk to any Frisco native and you'll find that this attitude survives to this day. With the help of a local printing firm, Norton even issued his own currency, which was actually accepted by many residents of the city, despite having no backing behind it whatsoever. In fact, a few Norton bucks are still floating around today as highly valued collector's items. I tried doing the same thing a while back, but unfortunately, Onella rubles are still only worth their weight in Onella rubles. Of course, it wasn't all magpies and molasses for our good friend Josh. He was once arrested by a policeman named Armand Barbier, who wanted to throw him in an asylum for his apparent insanity. Needless to say, when the public caught wind of this, they lost their fucking minds. Irate citizens wrote complaints in droves. All the newspapers published scathing editorials towards the police department. Stray cats were thrown into wood chippers. I don't have any evidence for that last one. I'm just, assuming based on what I would do in this scenario. Anyway, pretty soon, the chief of police got the memo, and Emperor Norton was released unscathed. Thankfully, Norton issued a royal pardon towards the man who arrested him, and from that point onward, whenever Norton passed a member of the force, they would stop and salute him. So, although in many ways he appeared godlike, Norton was but a mortal. And, as mortals sometimes do, Emperor Norton decided to drop dead on a street corner on January 8th of 1880. However, he left behind a legacy the likes of which most of us could only dream of. Beyond just the comedic value of his many exploits, Norton definitely had his prophetic moments, with some of his orders actually coming true decades after they were given. On multiple occasions, he ordered a bridge to be built between San Francisco and the Oakland Bay Area, which was eventually constructed in the 1930s. He also told people to form a League of Nations to uphold international interests. Unfortunately, a man yelling in California wasn't quite enough to convince the leaders of the world that such a thing was necessary. But who knows? Maybe little Nordo could have stopped World War I if he had been just a bit louder. I hope this tale has inspired some of you young impressionable kids out there. Not because I expect any of you to succeed in the same way Norton did, but just because it's my personal belief that the world could always use more oddball vagrants. Wait a minute. Oddball vagrants. Product placement. Sponsor time. Question. Do you do...
That was a stretch, Sam. That was a stretch. Anyway, very short, very straightforward. Didn't have a lot to add there, but I was familiar with this story. There was a documentary, I believe it was The West, by Ken Burns, that talked a little bit about Emperor Norton, so that's where I knew him. He is quite a colorful character, and he's hardly alone. There are, I think, a lot of areas, especially the bigger cities, but even small rural areas, often have their hometown heroes that are kind of figures like Norton, that are kind of larger than life, might even be like Norton transients or whatever, that just, for whatever quirky reason, stand out in the local community, and people just kind of embrace him and run with it, embrace them and run with them. Norton, however, is one of the big examples of that he may have started in San Francisco, but he really became kind of a national legend, but far more so a San Francisco legend. So, interesting story. Shows you that sometimes even the people at the very, very bottom can reach the absolute heights of power through unorthodox means. Yeah, so that was fun. Short, but fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. See y'all next time.